Next item on our,
Is this additional information, additional agenda or not?
We're not there yet.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
okay, next is the monthly budget report. And I'd just like to let you know Tim has made it back from his rotator cuff surgery. We thank you very much for attending tonight, Tim. And
Have at it.
The total revenue that was reported during the month for all of our funds was about $68,000. But I highlighted in the report to you that we transferred out a significant amount of money out of the registration fee account. I think I've explained before that what we do when we bring in all the fees is we put them into the registration fees because we're getting so much money in at one time. And then when we get to this point in the year, we transfer that money into the various accounts. Some of that money went out of registration fees, went into technology fees, student parking fees, pay to participate, but a lot of it also went to activity accounts. So even though we received close to $100,000 in real estate taxes and our normal general state aid payment, and some of the other items that I highlighted for you, the net amount was only $68,000. What that does is it puts us at about 44% for the year in terms of our operating funds, the revenue for those funds. On the expenditure side, we had expenditures of little over 1.6 million, and our expenditures for the first 5 months were at 37% of budget. We're at 42% of the way through our fiscal year. So on the expenditure side, we're actually about 5 percentage points below, where you would expect us to be. There were several questions regarding the financials. One had to do with the transportation fund. The transportation fund, we receive about half of our revenue in the transportation fund that comes from the state from reimbursements. The other half basically comes from property taxes. We've received so far one of the 4 payments that we were scheduled to receive in terms of a transportation reimbursement. The other money has been vouchered by the state, but it hasn't been released by the comptroller's office. So if we received that money, it would be about $52,000, and it would actually it would put us well over 42% in terms of revenue, and it would take that decrease. We had a decrease in the balance in the transportation fund. It would actually be an increase in the fund balance. On the expenditure side, in transportation, we did have, as I've talked about before, in the month of July, we had to pay transportation expenses that we actually incurred in May and June, but they weren't billed until July by the transportation company. The transportation for special education, which is the biggest part of our expenditures in transportation. So that's why the expenditures for the first 5 months are higher than we would anticipate.
okay,
There were also some questions with regard to the tax levies and the percent of budget that we've received through November, and how we're going to look, as we go through the rest of the year. That's something that I'm going to have to sit down and really go through an analysis of, and I'll present that in the quarterly information that I provide to you in January. There was a question regarding
But Tim, were there any
sorry.
red flags there for you? I mean, that cause you concern? Tim Walsh raised?
I'd really like to take a look at it and see
Okay.
exactly where we're at before I comment
That's
on it,
fine.
because the dollars are pretty significant. There was a question regarding other local revenue. This is on page 23. It's account 10-1999. That account was set up this year for the revenue that we would receive from District 95, the payments they would make to us on the lunch program. That money was actually put into a different account. It's being reclassified. It'll show up on the financials at the end of December. Let's see. There was a question regarding
When
regarding
you're
the
on the
title.
Tim, when you're on the financials, and then are you going to go back to your report, or are you just going right through the questions now?
I'm going through the question.
Okay, so you're gonna come back then to like the proposed tax levy, audit, township treasurer?
Yeah, I thought the proposed tax levy would be covered later in the, I mean, I can cover it now.
Okay.
Or I can cover it later when it's on.
Audit will be
comes up on the
covered.
agenda.
Later?
Mhm.
What about township treasurer?
In terms of the policies, or,
Okay, that's
What-
for that policy, so none of this needs to
Yeah.
be covered, we can go right to the questions then.
correct.
Okay.
There was a question regarding Title I. Originally, we had a Title I revenue allocation of $79,900.
What page?
This is on page 24. If you look at the budget amount on account 10-4300, the budget is $79,900. We received an additional allocation. Our total revenue in Title I money this year is going to be $158,000. That additional money is what's being used for the academic support positions that we're looking at.
You have 24
What
in
we've
board book,
received-
Tim, or 24 in
Pardon?
your report?
It's 24 in board book. What we've received so far is $33,000 in Title I money. That actually is a payment from last year.
Page 26 on board book.
That's what I was
Oh,
gonna
okay,
say.
I'm sorry, it shows me. Payments on grants come a month after the end of the quarter, so the money that we earned actually in the quarter from April, May, and June, we don't receive until July. So the first payment that we get in July of every year is actually from the prior year. And the budget was not approved until October 4th by the state, or the grant wasn't approved till October 4th. So we really don't have any expenditures going through in the month of July or August or September. We can't start charging the Title I expenditure accounts until after that date of October 4th. So you'll see those expenditures starting to come in the next couple of months.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there
there
were-
are a lot.
Let's see. In looking at the revenue from state funds,
Page.
this is, again, the same page, up at the top. This is on the function series, which is under the 10-3000 series revenue accounts. It was noted that we're about $140,000 under budget. You'll see at the top of that, there's special ed private facility, special ed extraordinary, special ed personnel. Those are all reimbursements from the state. Again, similar to the transportation fund, we've only received one payment from the state on that, which is why all of those accounts are sitting at about 25%. If we receive a second payment for that, the income's going to, in that category of state revenue, is going to jump substantially. It would go up by at least $100,000. On general state aid, we're not at the 42% level, but we receive an $86,000 payment in the month of January. When the state processes the payments, the recalculations of general state aid that are done every year, they make one payment in the month of January. We'll get about $86,000 in January just from that alone. So that, along with the $60,000 that we normally get every month, our payment in January will be about $146,000. So that'll bring that account up significantly. Again, there was a question regarding the tax levy revenue that in the operations fund, which, as I said, I'll take a further look at for the quarterly report in January. On the expenditure side, there was a question regarding the health insurance, and what I have to do is I have to reclassify some of the insurance expenses out of this general education, these general education accounts into the superintendent accounts as well as the special ed accounts. So you'll see that allocation come through in the next month, which will reduce the expenditures in the general account and increase the expenditures in special education and in the superintendent's account area. There was a question regarding one of the accounts that we have for
What
set up.
page?
This is,
43.
I showed on page 43. This has to do with the CTE grant.
That's going to be 45 for our current board book.
Okay.
So his questions add 2 pages, and I'll let you know if that's not right.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So the actual expenditures for that CTE grant, which is a number of those accounts that end in they're 10-1400, and the last 3 digits are 617. We've spent $15,000 out of 22,000. Those accounts, generally the grant accounts, when we budget for that, because we don't necessarily know exactly what our expenditures are going to be, we just put the total grant amount into one line item. And then as we go through, as the grants are approved, it can come out of different line items in those areas. So on an overall basis, we're going to stay within budget, but on an individual basis, account by account, we may actually be off. There was a question regarding the tuition payment. This would be on page 51. The account at the top, 10-1912, which was out-of-district tuition. We're at 47%. I'm going to have to sit down with Gail and review the payments and see exactly where it looks like we're going to be at when we come to the end of the year. Again, I'll do that before the January Committee of the Whole meeting and make a presentation at that time.
That might be one where we might end up going over, right? Because we've had some factors change.
Yeah. There was a question regarding some of the charges in the operations fund. This is on page 60.
He's adding the 2 pages for you.
Now I'm adding the 2 pages, I'm sorry.
Oh, my God. Okay,
I should have
thank you.
mentioned that. We had originally budgeted for storm loss, we had originally budgeted that we'd have expenditures this year of $18,500. We'd have revenue of $22,000, a little over $22,000. We're actually going to have revenue coming in on the storm damage of about $35,000, but we're also going to have about $30,000 in expenditures. So these expenditure line items are going to be over budget, but at the same time, the revenue line item is going to be over budget because the damage was more extensive than we thought when we were preparing the budget. And
Thanks, Tim.
I think that's about it.
Okay, any other
Okay.
questions on the budget?
Yeah, Tim, you mentioned that the other revenue was the District 95's,
Correct.
but as I saw on the expenditure side, it's basically, that's where you're netting them.
Right.
Where is the fee account, where is that dollar going to? Is there a different account
The
for the?
expenditure account? No, it's
7%. Because I don't see
7%?
I don't see a 7% differential because you're, right, you basically have no
Yeah.
revenue and you basically have no expenditure. I would have expected at least seeing 7% of the year-to-date amount somewhere, right? Where would that have been? Where's that at?
The 7% is going to go into the same account that we.
Oh, don't worry about it now.
It's going to be the same account that we use for the 7% that we receive on our own sales. So it's 10-16.
Okay, so it's in that
16,
account,
it's
not
in that
broken out
account.
separately?
No,
Oh,
it's not broken out separately.
Okay, thank you.
Are we able to see that, though, to make sure that we're covering our costs?
Yes, I can do an analysis of it.
Just it might be something you want to include in the financials on a quarterly basis, so the board's
That'd be good.
assured that we're covering our costs from the intergovernmental agreement.
All right, any other questions? All right, given that, I need to have a motion.
This is just the
No.
budget.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't need that.